Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Men You Love To podcast. I'm Kat, your host, and today I'm so excited. My guest is Larry DeMarco. He's the Executive General Manager of the International Council for Men and Boys, and he's also the founder of the lawcenter.net, which assists parents in custody courts. Larry, thank you so much for being here with me today. I'm so excited to have you as a guest.
I'm excited to be a guest. Thanks for having me, Kat.
Thank you. I left Larry a message and I was like, I know this is a long shot, but would you even consider being a guest on my podcast?
And
And
that's what I was thinking. You don't really understand your value to the ICMB, how you are 10 times as many men advocates as a woman who is supporting men and boys. So I was also excited to hear from you as well. So it's a mutual feeling or excited to that you reached out.
right, because we're so on the same page. And thank you so much for saying that. It doesn't feel that way. And your bio is short when I read it, but your mission is enormous, and so is your courage to be taking this on. And I mean, can you just tell us about the International Council for Men and Boys?
Yes. So I want to give a lot of credit there for my boss, Edward Bartlett, who's a humble guy. He's out of the limelight and doesn't want his name used, so he'll have to forgive me for dropping it there. But it's his brainchild, and it goes back maybe almost 20 years or so. It started an organization called Center for Prosecutor Integrity because it was big for him to fight false allegations and protect the presumption of innocence. That morphed into DAVIA, the Domestic Abuse Violence International Alliance, which is a gender neutral way of looking at domestic violence because there is a narrative that men are abusers and bad, women are innocent victims and good. But the data and statistics show that each gender has an equal propensity for violence, and women actually can probably be even more aggressive, probably for an instinct to protect the young. I'm not saying something bad when I say that, but because the point is a neutral perspective, but men have the bad rap. They so thus the need for that organization, and because there's such a a brainwashed public, or there's been such an overreaction to protect women. Now, let me just pause there and just say how much humans that we as a society have in debt to feminism and women for publicizing that yes, domestic violence happens. People get abused, people get molested, horrible things happen. I think women carried that burden on their backs to prove that that happened. So, all love, respect, and honor to women and their decades and centuries of fighting so that we now people know abuse happens. So, our job is easier as men. Our job is it happens to both, just very different methods. Men are physically stronger and women are psychologically smarter. And again, they need to be, because, well, God, I think it's a God given instinct or gift. So that we're trying to change the narrative to say, look, what uh, anti violence or anti domestic abuse is all about is really protecting the vulnerable and weak, irrespective of gender. So, Ed, who I mentioned earlier, who is the president of all the organizations under the umbrella, feels that there needs to be an we have to change that narrative, which requires some strong language, which can alienate some. I hate to use the word feminist too much because it's confused. It has a lot of different, it's a lot of different terms, a lot of different uh, uh, meanings now, but he feels he has to call out a radical mindset that is overly aggressive, and he wants to match that aggression, right or wrong, with an equal and opposite aggression pushback, hoping that
Full
something good will
force.
come of that. So we, which leads me, this is my long way of answering directly your question. So the International Council for Men and Boys really developed and sprung out from these other two organizations, the Domestic Abuse Violence and International Alliance, which is our sibling organization, and the parent organization is the Center for Prosecutor Integrity. But my role with ICMB, which is our acronym, is to have a gentler language and really be more inclusive, where we're trying to reform the UN and other things like that. And I know that that has a spot in your heart as well to get to correct whatever imbalance is there. So we're all somewhat working together, those my our sibling organizations, but I get to just focus on really 12 areas of male inequality facing men and boys.
And those 12 areas are so powerful. And I've been on your website just learning. And I love the format because for all 12 disadvantages for boys and men, not only do you have a clear picture of what the problem is backed up with data and statistics,
That's,
but then you also provide solutions and resources for each. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant.
that's
Did you
right.
want to list the 12 areas?
He gets credit for that, and you're putting me on the spot. Usually, I
I can
have
do
that
it.
website up and I could read right down, but they are education, health,
Yeah.
the boy crisis, which is somewhat of a catch-all, but the idea that boys they have a purpose void, and father absence hits them harder than girls. Four is false allegations, which includes parental alienation. Five is victims of violence, which is different than
Than domestic violence.
partner abuse. That's
Yeah.
right. It's more that men are being butchered in wars and things, and there's an unequal. Well, that's really it. Wars, but it's other, due to gun violence and things like
Violent
that.
crimes, yes.
And that something somewhat gets ignored. Ignored. Six is a parenting imbalance, mainly in custody court. So we try and focus on shared parenting. Seven is one of the things that senior moment. Now I'm going to go back from and come down because I can remember it that way. 12 is media bias, that there's a bias against men and boys that really turns through everything. 11 is adoptive rights, a lack of adopted rights. Um, me, uh, Men are vulnerable to something called paternity fraud.
Yes.
And if there's any problem between a mother and child in terms of mother gets incarcerated or has an addiction issue and can't take care of the child, men are often skipped over
Right.
and not able to adopt their own child, even if they're a father and really would have wanted to be in the child's life the whole time. That's 11.
Right.
10 is workplace injuries and workplace violence. And basically, a part of that is men being soldiers. And so there's a huge a risk of death in that. They're 15 times more likely to die on the job and
On the
twice as
job,
likely to get
dangerous.
hurt
Yeah.
because they take
Unfortunately.
hazardous employments. I guess there's not many women on bridges or operating this equipment that can fall off a bridge and things like that. Nine is homelessness. So men are 76% of the homeless population, but shelters are really for women. And they were, at least in my country, that came from domestic violence shelters because women are considered at risk of violence on the street. So they're allowed to come in, and men are often living in their cars and homeless if they can afford a car. If not, you'll see them on the street. So eight is partner abuse, and that's exactly what I started with. So I'm not going to duplicate that now. And seven is I'm going to let you change the conversation. And I'm going to say here it is. But for right now, it's
I'm so impressed that you remembered all 11 of these.
thank
Not
you
just
because
the
I should
names,
have
but the
all
order of
12.
them and then the details. That's brilliant.
Sure, I've been doing this for a while, of course. So, but thank you. You're going to pause this if on the other. No, I'll get it. You can go with your next question. I'll have this for you.
Um, some of the shocking things that I read were in the part about education, how a lot of the feminism teachings are making boys hate themselves and also hate women. This is something as a mother that I have seen for the last 10 years, maybe even longer. My son's 17, turning 18 soon, and I've seen this in the school system and how he's been treated, how he was dismissed, how the parents, how the teachers talk about boys, and just some of the things that are going on in schools, um, that make boys hate themselves for being that gender, and they grow up like that.
I'm so interested to hear to learn that you as a mother of a child sees that the number seven was criminal systems, men that get double the penalty for the same crimes. We can come back to that later. So moving on, what 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 I hear, and again, this is more after I was out of school, that boys are in some liberal jurisdictions are forced to apologize for being a boy to all their girls in the classroom because of the historic oppression that the patriarchy has imposed on women, or because that domestic abuse is something that happens and I'm a boy and boys abuse girls, so they're told to apologize for that. On our website, on item number 12, which is the media bias, there is a picture of a boy. It's funny, sometimes I do take this to heart, but there's a picture of a boy who says, "How do we stop this boy from becoming a monster?" That was not a sarcastic newspaper headline in Australia. I mean, can you imagine that an editor said, "Yeah, this is a good idea. Let's put this up because we do have to stop all boys from naturally becoming a monster because they're going to somehow eat or destroy the women that they date if we don't stop their nature." So that's that. That's where that comes from.
Larry, do you know that when I saw that, I thought that was an AI generated picture
No, it was a
to
real.
describe the fact that 70% of what we see on the media regarding men and boys is negative. I thought it
No,
was just like a generated image. I had no idea that someone actually published that
no, my boss found that, and that
somewhere.
was a perfect example of a headline and how, society has just been brainwashed to think that men are bad, and you see it in at least American television with how the father is always a goofball in comedies or a nerd or some type
He's
of
incompetent. He just doesn't know how
incompetent,
to
and the
write. He's
woman.
always just like slow. He doesn't get anything.
That's right, and it's
Right,
usually humorized, so they're
right.
trying to be funny, but men are really good targets. And the other thing is how humorous it is for men to get hit in the groin and keel over in pain. That's something that causes laughter and joy, but you won't see that very funny if it happens to a woman because women are pure, they're innocent, and we don't want to see a woman harmed. We men will die to protect our women in our lives.
Even things like a man getting slapped in the face in a public place. No one bats an eye. Everyone assumes that he did or said something that he deserved to be hit in a public place or have a drink spilled in his face. No
It's
one
funny.
even questions it. And
It's funny that you say that. And Harry Met Sally, someone sent that. This had to do with partner abuse, and he was and Billy Crystal was trying to court her, and he said something that maybe pressed a nerve,
yeah,
and she hauled off and nailed him. And I'd forgotten about that. I had
yeah,
completely forgotten, and he accepted it like it was his duty as a man to take
yeah,
abuse from a woman, and he just that was never part of that movie. No one, I actually had forgotten about it
right.
until I saw it because Sally, Meg Ryan, was an America's sweetheart at the time, but that was something that was her right to hit him because he hurt her feelings in that moment.
Right. He said something disrespectful, and disrespecting a woman means that
Yeah,
it is okay for them to
that's
put
right.
their hands on you, to throw objects at you, to humiliate you in public.
That's right.
And this has been normalized widely through social
That's
media
right.
and media. And not only that, but it's romantic. It's been like, if she doesn't get passionate and she doesn't do these things, then she doesn't really love you. It's not only like giving women permission to act like that, but it's almost making it romantic and passionate. Like it's something that we should all strive for, to have the type of relationship. And if you ever look at comments on social media where there is that display of power, that dynamic where the woman is in charge and she hurts the man, whether he's shown in the hospital and it's a skid or it's not, or she just throws something at him. there is men and women in the comments that say things like, if that's not my type of love, I don't want it. If that's not how intensely she loves me, I don't want her. Like people have made this romantic.
There's also a movie, I Love You to Death. Have you heard of this?
I have not
With
heard of
Kevin
it.
Kline, it's really humor. Look, it was really laugh out loud, pee in your pants funny, at least to my brother. I
Right,
found it funny too. But at the end, so she had hitmen shoot him, and so he's walking around in the whole movie with bullets, and she gets charged, and he says, and he because he was unfaithful, he slept with several women a week.
right.
And at the end, when he realized that she killed him, she went to her cell or something like that and said, "That's love. That's the passion that I wanted to see." And it was funny, like, because it was so ridiculous. But you really didn't appreciate the truth, that the horror behind that. That's how it was viewed. So, it's funny. I'm thinking about that now. I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned that.
I think it's because we have become so desensitized to the abuse and disrespect towards men in movies and social media and songs and everything. And I think we just don't even notice it anymore. It's just a norm.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear you be so aware of that, Kat, as a mother of a boy, of a man, young man.
Right. Thank you. Larry, I want to get to know you. I'm so inspired by you and by your work, and I just want to know how you got started advocating for men. And was there one event, or was this just things that took years to build, a frustration or a need to want to be part of making a change?
Thank you for your interest and thank you for your question. So, I'll try and put this as quickly as I can without skipping the drama behind the story. But I would say that in growing up through my dating life, it was actually the opposite. It was women sharing rape and molestation. Like, these women I fell in love with, and I would, march with women. I gave speeches, during that Take Back the Night movement of the late 90s and early 2000s. So, as a lawyer, I wanted to think of civil remedies to help abuse victims who got so frustrated and devastated in criminal court. So, did some of that. My career path didn't bring me down to a lot of that work, but that was some volunteer work that I did from a group for a group like Security on Campus, founded by a family whose daughter was brutally raped and murdered on Lehigh's campus, and so they passed something called the Cleary Act. So that was really talking about school safety, and I volunteered for them. And then, but what happened? What got me in the movement is that I had a child in 2002, was not with his mother. It was something unplanned. And as a practicing attorney, I thought of always doing family law, but it was such a niche thing, and my clients weren't in that space. I always gave free advice because they couldn't afford it. It was an inner city clientele. And I went through the family court system, so I'm going to skip ahead. But through 18 years, we were in and out of court 10 of the 18 years. And I had an unsophisticated co-partner who didn't understand that I had an income that went like a stock quote because it was feast or famine in my industry, being a personal injury lawyer. So I had to keep going back. And she always welcomed that she didn't have to go back to court when I had an increase, but never understood that it was always there's good, bad year. So I'm going back every other year, thinking we could just do this something procedurally. The court system is so hostile to both parents. To either parent, you have a punishment disdain that you are taking up the court's time when you go. And it's almost like the whole system is set up to be a tax on parents who are fighting in any way. If there's a difference in agreement in travel or any type of dispute, it's so inefficient, and it's so, I was really, to make a long story short, I was very ashamed of my profession that took such a heavy tax, an hourly rate for stuff that you didn't need help for. But it was near impossible to get away from unless you represented yourself. Now, as a practicing attorney, I was able to represent myself, so I'm lucky. This is a happy, not happy. this is a survival story that I was able to teach myself, an area of practice that I didn't practice. And through time, I'm dealing with my own profession and figuring this out. So my ex and I, buried the hatchet. We co-parent now, happy ending there. However, the whole system, I always thought that her lawyer fed the fire when she didn't appreciate during an emotionally conflict time that I was always trying to make things better. She felt under attack, irrespective of what was happening, and I believe that her counsel fed to that. And he's not a bad guy. He was not a bad guy because she was with him the whole time. But it was something that the system encouraged him to do. There was an incentive, a financial incentive built in, and a hate of the opposite part of your client. I was like, wait a minute, isn't there a 50% chance that your client's wrong? Don't you ever want to get to actually what's happening? Because I was always thought of her as a family member. I always had that. I mean, I had that support system and training. I was raised to know and believe that. So got out, son's 18, and I realized that how blessed I was, how fortunate that I am in my life, but other people are not. I thought of the bullets that I dodged in this court system, where is how easily the judge could have said, "Look, this is a serious allegation, Mr. DeMarco. It's going to take us 5 to 10 years to figure this out, but you can't see your child during that time, or you have to pay $500 an hour supervised visitation, something awful that these dads that I know go through." Guilt by accusation because a judge doesn't want on their conscience that 0.01% chance that this could be true and you didn't do everything that you could do to avoid this. And that's part of how false allegations are weaponized because there's a huge incentive. So I'm not vilifying someone who's trying to protect their child and thinks the child would be in danger, but it's a system that through primitive attitudes just butcher parents, and that's one of our 4 areas of male inequality. False allegations seem to happen more to men than women, but boy, does it happen both sides. So I want to acknowledge your viewers, your female viewers, that I understand that that's a dual sword. Just men are stronger physically, so women, when they're feeling aggressive, may use that more frequently, and that's the point that I'm making there. So really, I'm a family court reformer. I'm a lawyer, and I am ashamed of my profession in the court system and what was set up. A documentarist, his name is Joe Sorge, who did a movie Divorce Corpse, said we're in the Stone Ages. I mean, this will be known as, the same thing as medicine, putting leeches to suck blood out of your, like, that was medicine. Well, that's what law is doing. It's like it's putting these leeches on the job to suck your money, your spirit, your everything away, and this will eventually be corrected. And in the International Council for the International Council for Men and Boys, I get paid to do that. It's helping men and boys in ways that actually hurt both men and women. So I'm privileged to have this job and to be able to do that and work for men, because in doing so, you're really helping both genders.
Thank you, Larry, for sharing that story. I was getting frustrated right alongside with you, and so grateful that you were able to advocate for yourself because that reality for so many men is painful and they lose decades. And sometimes after they lose decades or years, the brainwashing of their children with the other partner, the other parent, is so profound that they never get their children back.
That's right.
Um, and this is the other thing that people don't understand is not only is this, I totally agree with you, Larry, to the point that I have been separated for 10 years. I'm still married to the father of my children because we have refused to go to court until all 3 children are adults. We are staying out of family court. And when all 3 children, which is next month, will be adults, we can get an uncontested divorce where it doesn't have to go in front of a judge or it doesn't have to go to family court because we refused to give them $1. We refused to spend even one moment in court fighting over our children and wasting our energy with that. So I have been so passionate about that because I see how the system is designed to keep you fighting longer, to not actually resolve conflict. And with the false allegations, there is no need and there is no urgency to resolve the issue. And there's so much time wasted. And I think it just makes everything worse. And it changes kids' lives forever. Generations of children are affected by this court system, and just their lack of urgency and their lack of wanting to be accountable for making a decision. So you're saying no decision is better than any decision and we'll just wait for years.
because
Um,
they don't know what to do. They don't want to
right,
make hard decisions. They don't want the responsibility of what
right,
can change a life. So it's easier to keep the status quo, which is a decision, which is
right.
a decision not to, when people need you, when you're needed, to turn the other way is worsening the situation.
Yeah, it's doing so much harm. Um, I want to hear from you as a lawyer, as a father, as a man that advocates um, for men and for boys. What is fatherlessness doing to our generation of men, in your opinion?
So let's talk about numbers because you look at the statistics, what father absence causes, and I hear this word of my friend Emma Johnson saying, you still have a father, but absent meaning not nearly enough time with the child. She thinks language is important, so let me specify. Every other weekend dad that isn't figuring out a way to be remembered during that 2 weeks that he's away, that isn't parenting from afar due to lack of communication skills or for whatever reason. So it's father deprived, I think is the better word, because the
Yeah,
father exists, is alive and not dead, but has been separated by the family court system to where it's an insignificant time or not nearly enough to co-parent. Uh, Statistically, what that causes to children is a steep increase in bad results. So you think of the ways that we measure health. I look at the 12 areas of male inequality: education, health, crime, staying in school, truancy, drug addiction or lack of drug addiction, teen pregnancy, abortion, injury, victims of abuse through outside the home and whatnot. All those statistics and ways that we measure good quality of life plummet for father absent boys, children too, but it's worse for boys statistically. So it's a horrible crisis that society is facing, and some nonprofits try to put a measure, a dollar sign measure, but if you can keep fathers more engaged with their families through things like shared parenting and other things like that, or even mentoring a child who doesn't have father presence in his or her life, you increase society's functionality and uh, good numbers exponentially. If you can figure out, fatherhood programming or you know the same or similar, doesn't have to be equal, but if you can steer programming toward father mentorship, things like that, it is the single greatest contribution to early childhood functioning, that bigger than any one other single usage of DHS programming or financial support.
I think I know the answer, but I'm still going to ask you. Do you think that there is an attack on masculinity? That it's
So
deliberate, or do you think that this is just a byproduct of the pendulum swinging the other way? Do you think that there's forces that are making this happen?
so let's say both. So sure. When I talk about this, I like to start by when there was a traditional family household. You had Mama Bear, Papa Bear. Papa Bear went and worked. Mama Bear stayed home. What happened was Mama Bear had to go to work. Society changes, and something that we don't remember is that uh, femininity was under attack. women could not win. You were either butch, a man, you lost your femininity because you could support your family, and women were vilified back then. So how can we talk about, I don't want men to be victims. I remember sending out a press release when I first got the job. Someone sent a reply, send me an email and said don't be a victim. What's this victim mentality? And sure enough, he blocked. He tried to call the email back and whatnot. However, I appreciate his point. So I do not like to talk about an attack on masculinity without remembering the attack on femininity. How can we do that and be so blind? So it is temporary. There is, you know, a man who says we're under attack is temporarily correct, but it is, and you were also correct in your question, which demonstrates your wisdom and your understanding, that it is an overcorrection. So society jumps on genders and forgets that it's just our turn, so it's temporary. And, this is something I try and remind my colleagues and my boss that we're going to win this. The difficulty is stop the pendulum from going whoosh. Here's women, strong, strong, men weak. Whoosh, patriarchy, men dominating, oppressive. We want to keep it in the middle if we can stop that swinging. So we don't want to, we want to understand what's going on and stop scapegoating men, thinking, pushing back, we have to push back men so that women can then do their natural and get. No, that doesn't help anybody. You always want to protect and strengthen the weak, but you don't want to do it by punishing the strong. If that answers your question, I
It
don't want to go
does. It
too
does.
long. I don't want to go too long, but
And I actually really liked your take on it, about remembering why the pendulum is swinging the other way, because sometimes it's even hard for me to remember that, because I'm living in the world where I don't feel the inequality towards women anymore. I mean, I do feel the unsafe part, like I still won't go certain places dark at night, by myself, but it's so ingrained in me that I don't even notice it.
so let me
So
acknowledge
sometimes
my
I
wife.
even forget myself.
No, fair enough. I have a reminder of my wife chirping in my ear, talking about, she walked over my shoulder and saw the 12 areas of male inequality, or she saw, I'm sorry, the hashtag gender equality for men. And she went, gender equality is supposed to refer to the weaker sex that needs to be lifted. So she has empowered me to pursue social work as a vocation, which is not typically the higher paying industries, and while she's having corporate success, so she's liberated me to do this work and protect the weak, which I is very soul satisfying. And she reminds me of the term mansplaining, where if she's in a room full of men, she's ignored. She won't be heard. She doesn't get to talk. And she talks about that glass ceiling, where, at least in corporate America, still you have what maybe she would describe as an old boys network of execs that protect their that type of power, and that is still rare. It's more of an exception. You see it where a woman has control of a company, like what was it, Facebook or where Meta or wherever. You have strong women who can excel, and it does happen now. But much, she's deals with the women empowerment groups professionally because it's still a struggle in that narrow window, whereas men have other issues. So we can talk about, well, I know we're talking about that now, but she reminds me of that. How would I tie that in? You were asking, well, hopefully it's obvious to the viewer, as I'm losing track of, or
No,
losing.
that was really good. And what I was thinking about as you were talking is this is the power and the beauty of conversation between the masculine and the feminine. What you just described is you having this conversation with her and you both of you being able to see both things at the same time. It doesn't, that's all I'm saying is it doesn't have to be and or, like it doesn't have to be an or. Women or men are struggling. Women or men are being abused. We're not fucking competing here for who's being more abused, for who has it worse. All we're saying is women and men can both struggle in these areas, and we haven't acknowledged that men have been. So can we just acknowledge that they are?
Right.
It's
And
not a
that's
competition. And your conversation with your wife just proves that it doesn't have to be. Both can exist and be true at the exact same time,
certainly
right? What generation do you think is more at risk for the media, especially the media? And I think what's happening in schools, um, and the media being 70% negative. I have never, like we talked about movies and media and all of that, the display and the almost numbing to men's struggles and men's pain and how we're so numb to it, we don't even notice it. But it's getting progressively worse, in my opinion. So what generation do you think is most at risk for falling victims to this mentality that men are abusers and women are victims and not finding ways to figure it out and converse?
the generation that's looking for love and marriage are the most at risk right now. That's my answer clearly. Young people, my grandmother made a made would say there's three tragedies of life. A child without a mother. Interesting, she didn't say without parents. She said a child without a mother, but she's older, of course.
Right.
That's tragedy one. A young child without a mother. A middle-aged or a young adult without love. And an old person without money. Those are the three tragedies of life. So when you talk about this gender divide, I mean, father absent, sure that boy is worth, but I would say it's those who are looking to marry because you have MGTOW men going their own way. You have women who feel who think they want love or marriage and feel like there's no one there because they don't understand their own sense of privilege and the fact that their well has been poisoned not by reality but by brainwashing. Lisa Britton, her writing with Evie Magazine, talks a lot about that. A woman who needs to be independent and self-sufficient rather than needs to just be in a healthy, loving relationship. And it's such a higher. You do both work, know how to, compete, all that fun stuff, all that self-sufficient stuff is great, but we're dependent. We men and women need and love each other, and that's how God made us. If you have a biblical sense of what human existence is, so that to me is the generation that is so vulnerable. If you can't feel, if you think that men and women are out to hate each other, that type of confusion and self-destructive imprisonment is just so devastating to a happy life.
I agree with you, Larry, like 1,000%. Um, I think there's a narrative telling people that they're better off, women are better off alone. And success is no longer being measured as far as connection. Success is now being measured in status and in money and in other things, and how many subscribers you have and how many friends you have on social media. But we are human beings and we are wired for connection. It is why we are here on this earth. And when we're on our deathbed and it's our last hour, are we going to think about the money that we made and the places that we went to see? Or are we going to think about the people that we got to love and we got to hold? But that's exactly what it's going to be. And they're just making people feel like it doesn't matter anymore. And you can be happy by yourself. And people are depressed and they're anxious and they're so isolated and they're not happy at all.
Right. I find it very hurtful or so sad for one gender to say, we don't need you and think they mean it. But it's both. Notice I'm not either
Yeah. Oh,
gender.
yeah.
They both do it. And I'm like, so you're bragging that you were able to shut off part of your humanity and live like a corpse because you figured out how to numb your pain? You want to celebrate the wound that you're living with instead of live with the struggle of healing and growing and learning to communicate. It's just, if you can figure out how to get clicks by talking about deep psychology rather than that easy hate that
Right.
sells so well.
Yeah.
If you're walking the road less traveled, of spiritual growth, that means fewer views and less money. So, Kat, if you can figure out how to make it big on the painful stuff
Yeah.
of growth and pain, boy, will I celebrate you, and I'll do everything I can to support you.
Well, Larry, I promise if I do figure it out, I'll let you know, but
You'll
I've
let me
been
know.
able to
Thank you.
figure it thus far.
I'll do the
I've
same. If I ever figure it out, I'll do the
right.
same. I promise.
Without selling, without giving up my soul, without and spreading hate. I haven't been able how to figure it out, and I'm not willing to compromise on my morals and my ethics and what I stand for. And I don't stand for hate. I stand for love and truth.
Right.
And I want to end this on a positive note. I feel like me and you, I'm so fascinated by everything that you do, and I feel like you could teach me so much. You have such a wealth of information and stories. I could probably talk to you for the next 6 hours. Um, but I want to know if you see hope. If
I do.
you do. Okay.
Yes. Thank you for
Okay.
asking.
Thank you.
If you want to steer me, I can go. But if you want to steer your question, if you want
Yeah,
to
what
finish, I
is your
interrupted you.
evidence of hope? Is it the media? Is it the people that are gathering around to support men and we're finding each other and we're fighting these systems and we have the International Council for Men and Boys and we have other organizations that are popping up for men. And what is giving you the most hope right now?
My faith that there's a resurgence of faith in young people. That you hear a story in Manhattan, New York, where there is a church that has standing room only, can't get into a service. So I understand that that's happening, not just there, but there is that people are starting to get sick of the hate. That's one source. The second source is technology. I think that I just, I believe that the good people, you've seen a lot of the lawsuits, the suicides, and the evils of technology. But it's kind of like a child playing with a gun. Our generations are children because this is brand spanking new. Social media still in the history of mankind is relatively new. So we're living through the bad stuff. But once your generation, our generation, we're the same generation. You actually may be Y. I'm X because I'm born in 68. So you may be the older Y. But anyway, those generations are going to figure this out and better teach their kids, or the kids, because they grew up with it as babies, they
Mhm.
grew up with it. They're going to see dangers faster than we did because we had to learn to use it before we learned the dangers. So then good people are, instead of getting hurt by it, are going to be able to use it for good. And the good actors are going to outpace the bad actors, and we're going to see improvement as decades and generations go on. Because, and I'll say in my own personal life that Claude Coworker is changing my life because so if there's something that I wanted to volunteer with my church, another nonprofit that wants to protect the family or whatnot, so we now can pay us for a subscription that can duplicate a human being. We have something called AI agents now. So who could help us market, who can help us make videos, who could help us spread our podcasts and our good message. So I think there's a lot of reason to believe and to be optimistic, and for us humans who really love each other, who love the opposite sex and are ready to fight through our pain, can spread that good loving message better, rather than getting buried in depression and suicide from keeping up with the Joneses.
Thank you for saying that. I felt every word, and I actually agree with you the same. My faith is what keeps me going on the days that I see no evidence of being able to make a difference. And my faith in humanity, that love is stronger than hate, and that people are waking up and they're working on themselves and they don't want to carry the burdens of past generations and put them on the next one, and that hopefully, the scale will tip the other way and things will be different in my lifetime. That is my goal, to see it
Yeah, I
still in
think it
my
will.
lifetime.
I do. I'm optimistic
Um,
about it. I really am.
and
Good question.
I really cherish days like today where I do get to be hopeful, and I cherish and I celebrate the little moments and the little wins along the way, because I think it's important to do that when it feels like it's too heavy and it's too big of an issue to tackle. Um, one last question,
Sure.
right? If you could tell women and men separately, like what is the one thing that women can do to be part of the solution? And what is the one thing that men can do to be part of the solution?
Communicate with one another. Learn basic communication skills, especially if you're dating age. My wife and I teach pre-Cana with our church, and we teach communication skills. And part of rules for or habits for fair fighting is called really is just how to have hard communications when you're with your loved one. Assume good intentions. Humans feel pain, and an alpha human will be threatened by their own emotion, so that when someone is suggesting something uncomfortable, you feel a threat. But if you assume there is just something to work through, to discuss calmly and with a forgiving spirit and soul, the same couple applying assume good intentions versus the couple who is scrutinizing and ready to pounce in a
Yeah,
fight,
improve
the
this.
same raw material can be the difference between a couple that's alienating their children to hate against one another in a divorce and a couple that goes to be the model marriage. It's the same raw material. It's not choosing the spouse, it's not being lucky, it's hard work, it's trust, and it's communication skills. It's not magic. It's not. You can choose to be with the one you love or not, or to put the gun down if you've already gone your separate way and you're fighting a divorce and co-parenting. By using assuming good intentions, communication skills can be the difference between pain and happiness, suffering and happiness.
Thank you, Larry. That's beautiful.
You're a great audience. Thank you.
No,
Thank
honestly,
you,
thank
Kat. What
you.
a joy.
And I'm just like, always choose love. If you have a choice, if you have to choose fear, anger, or love, always choose love. You can't go wrong if you choose love.
Yes,
Um,
and we can put on ourselves in a position to love by applying best communication practices. So, you know, love can also make you vulnerable because you can feel that pain more intense. So, love with awareness. Love with awareness. Has a slogan. There's a
there's a
slogan for it.
masculine spin on that.
Yes, yes. Love
Right?
with
See, like
awareness.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
love, lovey-dovey.
yeah.
And you're like, no, be aware. And that's the beauty of the masculine. So that was
Sure.
brilliant. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Larry. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for talking to me today. I am so inspired by the work that you do with the International Council for Men and Boys. I am inspired by your generosity of heart and your generosity of spirit. I can truly feel the passion and the heart that you put into your work and your purpose, and it leaves me so hopeful, which I haven't been all the time on this journey, and so inspired. I'm so, so grateful for you and for taking the time to talk to me today. And I hope that this is not our last conversation.
Me too. Me too. Your emotion and your heart got me emotional during this discussion with your questions. But I like
Thank
it.
you.
It's great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. You too. Thanks.
Thank you.